Actually, it'd be kind of funny if we always did the joke at the end and then transpose it at the beginning. So it was like, here's what they look like after the podcast. Hey, Nick.
Yeah?
What's brown and sticky?
Shit.
No. A stick.
Okay. Oh, it almost got me. Already got me.
And Cheers.
Welcome to our first filmed episode of Buzzed and Blabbering.
Episode technically 3, but episode 2, because episode 2 was lost.
Insert tabs.
Sure.
It'll be easy this time.
Okay.
Okay.
Great for tabs.
And we're back. This week, we have decided to start some interviews. I think this would be a cool format to continue with.
I agree. But
doing our
I'm
introduction.
glad that we're interviewing each other as practice before we start doing it to somebody else.
All right. So, would you like to introduce the beer?
Sure.
That we're doing today?
What are we drinking? Well, we have got the Night Nurse from Fogtown Brewing Company in Ellsworth, Maine. It is an American stout, barrel-aged, made with chocolate malt.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's the percentage?
It is 7.1%. It's got 7.1 fun percents.
So, that movie night that we're doing later
Is going to be real fun.
it's going to be fascinating. Wow.
Or 7.1 horsepowers, if you would like to say it that way.
Is that in focus?
That sure is, yeah. Night Nurse from Fogtown Brewing, Ellsworth, Maine. Go check them out.
All right.
I'm glad that we're sticking with Maine beers.
We should just
We should.
do that. Yeah. I like that.
All right.
You ready?
1, 2, 3. Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. Sláinte.
That definitely has some chocolate in it for sure. That is delicious.
I can taste some of the barrel agedness.
Yeah. Yep.
Barrel agedness.
Yep.
Smooth. A little bitter at the end.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
No, it's very good. I wanted to, and no offense to everybody that likes IPAs, I like IPA, but I didn't want to do an IPA for everything. So we're starting out heavy with a stout.
Our first two were
IPAs.
IPAs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll mix it up.
What did we have last week? The episode that got deleted because Nick wasn't smart enough to save the original.
R.I.P.
Yeah. What did we drink anyways?
Yep.
We drank from Booth Bay Craft Brewery.
Yep, it was that.
Thirsty Botanist.
Okay.
That's what we had.
I'm glad you're
And it was delicious.
It was good. And it was an IPA.
Yeah, it was an IPA.
And it was excellent.
Yeah.
That was slightly over 6 horsepower.
Yeah, we were feeling it at the end.
Oh, no, I was feeling it in the middle.
Okay. I might have felt it at the beginning too. Oh, my puzzle fell off the wall.
Oh.
It's okay.
You can put it, it's still together though.
It's hanging on, you know.
We'll see if it lasts the whole episode.
Ooh, let's find out, shall we? Pretty sure it came off yesterday, and I was wondering what it was, and I just saw it.
You know now.
I do know now. All right, so what are you hyper-fixated on?
So, unfortunately, my hyperfixation has all been work this week.
How so?
Well, I have a really big project for a local town here that I'm attempting to wrap up within the next 5 weeks. So that's taking a lot of my mental capacity Monday to Friday. And I'm also studying for a rather large written test for a license. So I need to, and that written test is at the end of the month. So it's kind of crunch time. But also, it's open book.
There you go. Open book is good.
But I have to pass it because they only give the written test one time a year. But yeah, that's my hyperfixation. Unfortunately, it's all been work-based, but
Okay.
that's all right.
Interesting. Does that have to do with the 13
2,000 years later.
fields? What are they called?
Oh, it's more than 13. It's 76.
76.
It's 76.
And it starts with a P. Something fields. No? S fields?
What?
The fields. You were digging the holes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So some of them are P's because they are pumped to,
Okay.
and some of them are G's because they are gravity fed. And some of them are V's because they're in the village.
We'll have to talk about that when I interview you.
Okay.
You have to tell me more about that.
Okay.
I'm interested in that shit.
All right. It's actual shit, too. So
I know. Oh, this is Joel. And this is Nate. Here's what we look at out there with 2 beers. Wait, is this my beer or is this your?
Mine's the one with the dent. I make a dent. I put a dent right here, and then it rests on my thumb.
I'm not going to do that now because then it will get confusing. But that sounds pretty smart.
It works out well.
Let's see, what have I been hyperfixated on?
What have you been hyper fixated on?
2 things.
Okay.
Number 1, doing my exercises for my knee,
Yeah.
which I
Because
can pretty much lift.
Yeah. There it is. Because you had it cut open.
I had to cut open, and I had my surgery, which went really well. But I've been hyperfixated on making sure that I do all the exercises 3 times a day.
Cool.
There are 6 exercises, and today I was able to do
A few moments later.
15. I think I did 15 leg raises.
Are you doing the number that your PT says you should be doing?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was 3 sets of 5.
Okay.
So
Yeah. No, that's 15.
it was painful, but
Quick
we got
mental
through it.
math. That is 15.
That is 15.
Yeah. I, as someone who has gone through PT twice, you should definitely meet what your PT says, but don't exceed it.
Yeah.
And expect pain.
It's been doing better, but doing all the exercises at once, doing the heel raises, then doing a little weight shifting, and then going to the laying down, doing the extensions, the heel slides, leg raises, and quad tightening. Doing it all at once. Whew.
Yeah, but that's how you would do it if you were at a PT appointment too,
True.
because they don't
Give you a break.
get paid to give you a break.
Yeah.
So they're gonna get you in and they're gonna make you do all kinds of uncomfortable things, and then they're gonna kick you out.
Yep.
So it's good that you're doing it how they would do it in the office.
It's been good. Today I have not used a crutch.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
I probably will tomorrow,
That's totally understandable.
but today, since I'm just mostly in my apartment,
Are you faster with the crutch right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
because I feel it's a backup,
Right.
and I've been hobbling around without a backup.
But it's good if you start to go down. It'd be good to have something to catch your balance with, other
Yeah.
than your 1/10 strength leg.
That's very generous of you.
Just trying to help you out.
Yeah, so that's been the big fixation, and then
There was another one. You said you
Yeah.
had 2.
just working on my blog.
Okay.
Just trying to keep that up. Once a week I post, and then I started a new.
Well, don't tell too much about that,
Okay.
because that's gonna be one of my interview questions for you.
For next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to tell
Well, there's
all
there's
of
2
us
subscriptions.
about the blog.
There's a free subscription and a $5 a month subscription. I had my first newsletter released, I think today, so I have to see what my 2 subscribers say about it.
Definitely going to call it a prescription at least once during your interview. So just be ready
I
for
hope
that.
you do. Beautiful. All right, that's that.
That is that.
Um,
Fuel up.
you ready?
Cheers.
Okay.
Do we need to synchronize all of our intakes of?
No,
Okay.
no, I think just those 2 that
Okay.
I just did. Or
Yeah.
3. So, with the help of ChatGPT, I came up with some questions for you.
Oh, good. I am not going to chat GPT mine. It's going to be raw.
So here's my first attempt at introducing somebody.
All right. You can use the paper. It's fine.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Not yet, not yet. This is Joel. Say hi, Joel.
Hi, Joel.
No. The audience says hi to you, Joel.
Oh.
Nice.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I'm an alcoholic. No, I'm just kidding.
Dad jokes.
Joel is a veteran of the Coast Guard of how many years?
10 years.
10 years. You currently work in the, I'm going to butcher it, but it's like the septic field industry?
Yeah, we call it the subsurface wastewater industry.
Subsurface wastewater industry.
4 words, but there are 2 words. 4 words, but there are 2 words. So subsurface is a word, and wastewater is a word.
So SSWWI.
Yeah. Right.
That's how I'm going to remember it.
Okay.
Okay. You are a avid flyer, or maybe not as much now because you're selling your plane.
It's sold.
It's sold.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thanks.
Good. But you're going to buy that, the little toy that we mentioned in
Maybe.
the first episode.
Maybe.
Maybe.
We're in negotiations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm also part of the Sandy River Flying Club in Phillips, Maine. And we, as a club, own 2 airplanes. So I can continue to fly. And I don't have to have the astronomical expense of owning my own aircraft.
That's pretty solid that you'll have access to
Yeah.
a couple of planes. Are they similar to the one that you had?
No.
No?
No.
Different brand and everything?
Different brand, different wing setup, different everything.
Oh, that is so good.
It is very good.
You get this down at the store?
I did.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So flying, you're into other outdoorsy stuff too.
Sure
Camping. You got a van.
We do. We have a camper van. We like to go. We don't really call it vanning. We just call it camping. It's a drivable tent.
Nice.
So yeah. So we about every weekend when it's not school time, we'll go. Usually within a 3-hour driving distance, and usually we leave with no plan. Like we have food and we have us and the dogs, and we just kind of see where we end up.
Sounds like a good plan.
It's a good time.
Or lack of plan.
It can be a good time. We have stayed in some interesting places.
Can relate.
So we haven't stayed at like a Walmart parking lot yet, but we stayed on top of a mountain one time. We tried to talk the Mount Washington Auto Road into letting us stay up there overnight, but they said no, because if it blows 200 miles an hour, your van's going to be on its side in the morning. And we were like, yeah, excellent point.
Thank you for saving our lives.
So we did not do that.
I have slept in a Walmart parking lot.
Were you in a
Twice.
car?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
It was still sketchy.
Yeah, I bet. I was just trying to figure out if you were in a vehicle or a camper or if you were in a tent.
Definitely not a tent.
That's good.
That was my car.
That's good.
What is the... Oh, this is going to hurt me. The restaurant chain... There's only like one in Maine, but there's a lot further south.
Okay.
And it's nice. Cracker Barrel.
Oh,
You can stay in a Cracker Barrel usually overnight.
Cracker Barrel in Maine is closed. Sorry.
Okay, so I only stayed in a Cracker Barrel in Virginia
Mm-hmm.
and maybe
There are a lot.
Tennessee.
There are a lot in Virginia.
Yeah,
There are many of them.
those were a great place to get dinner,
Mm-hmm. Sit in some rocking chairs.
sit in a rocking chair, and then go out and go nights.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect.
Those are good spots. But this isn't about me.
Okay. We also have not stayed at a truck stop yet. That's on the list too.
I don't recommend.
No?
Nope.
Okay.
There's truck stops as far as sketchiness goes, Walmarts, and then like Cracker Barrels.
So you put a truck stop and sketchiness above a Walmart.
Well, it was a rest stop. Would you consider that?
No, I mean like a truck stop where there's like a store and a restaurant and a place for you to actually park and stuff like that.
It was a rest stop. It was a truck rest stop.
Right, but okay. Have you ever driven across country on I-90 or I-80 for a long distance?
Is that going out west?
Yeah.
Then no.
Okay. So they have these massive truck stops where there's like 1 to 5 different restaurants and a laundry facility and shower facilities and gas pumps and diesel pumps and places to park and all that stuff. So it's actually like it's a meant to stay there type of area.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I was at a.
but they are on the side of the highway, kind of like a rest stop. But you do
Yeah.
actually have to get off the highway to get to them. They're highway adjacent,
I feel like this
not
was one
like a
of those.
rest stop
Okay.
where it's just like a
One building.
outhouse and then a building with maybe some sketchy free coffee in it. It's like a real place.
This had like a McDonald's and stuff in there.
Oh, okay.
It was you know the one in West Gardner?
Yep.
It was maybe not as big as that, but at least with all the parking and everything.
All right. I did notice that the one in where we stopped when we came back from Boston, we stopped at the one in.
Kennebunk?
Yes, we stopped at the Kennebunk Travel Plaza, is
Yep.
what they're calling it now. And there is signs there that if you're not a commercial vehicle, you cannot stay overnight in your vehicle.
Interesting.
So maybe we'll put like a fake DOT number on the side of our van so we can stop at rest stops and sleep without getting in trouble. We're not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing to see here. You should definitely do that.
Yep. DOT number 69420.
Blaze that. Speaking of blazing up, well, let's start with going back.
Okay.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up, so I was born in the town of Strong, which is where my house is now. But I grew up about an hour and 30 minutes southwest of there. The only reason why I was born in Strong is because my aunt was the nurse for the doctor in the town of Strong, and my mom wanted to have her sister there. So,
That's nice.
yeah. Plus, it was the only doctor that would trade a cord of firewood for childbirth. So, hey, win-win.
Is that for real?
Probably.
But not verified?
Well, I mean, not verified, but probably.
High 90% potential.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have a lot of aunts and uncles?
So yes. So my on my mom's side, I have, let me see here, 2 aunts and an uncle, and then obviously aunts and uncles by marriage. And then on my dad's side, I have 2 aunts and 2 uncles.
That's a pretty decent sized family.
Yeah. I mean, probably average size family for that time frame, I would say.
True. I know the answer, but what decade were you born?
I was born in the early 1980s, where hair was long, cars were good, and music was gooder.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yep.
The 80s was awesome.
When did you hit the age of 21? We'll jump ahead and we're going to go back.
Let's see here. The age of 21 would have been. I have to use my toes for this. No, so
Good thing you got
it was 2004. I turned 21 in the rise of PBR.
That makes sense. Why it's your beverage of choice?
It's not always my beverage of choice, but when I feel like rocking some skinny jeans with one leg rolled up because I'm riding my fixed gear bicycle everywhere, that's my go-to beverage.
Copy. What kind of a child were you? Were you pretty outside adventurous?
So I was an only child, and my parents worked a lot just to make it happen. So I was a latchkey kid. I had a key that was hidden in the barbecue in the propane grill. So when I got home, I could let myself in. So I had a lot of, and being an only child, I had a lot of solo time. So I had a lot of imaginary stuff happening. So I did a lot of Legos. I did a lot of erector sets. Not like that. I did
But also that.
also that. I did a lot of taking my dog out in the woods. Yeah, I did a lot of after school stuff. I wasn't really a sports kid, so I don't do the 3 like baseball, basketball, and football. I never got into that. That was never my jam. I was an individual sport athlete, so I did cross country running, cross country ski racing, and I did track and field in the summer, or in the spring, I should say.
Gotcha. What did your folks do?
So my dad had a plethora of jobs when I was growing up. First, he was a home builder, and he built a lot of the condominiums up at Sunday River, some of the original ones. And then he was a sales. He was, I don't know if he was the head of sales, but he was in the sales department for a wood mill that, or well, for a couple of wood mills that made wood turnings, which is fancy speak for dowels, just the long wooden rods that you can buy from the hardware store.
Yeah.
And one of them made toys and tool handles. So they made a wooden cube with holes drilled in all the faces and with one peg glued in one of the holes, and then you could build things by interconnecting all of these things.
Okay.
And they
Like
also
the erector sense,
yeah,
in a sense.
like a K'NEX almost,
K'NEX.
but made out of wood.
Gotcha.
And then they also made a lot of like wooden handles for barbecue grills to lift up the covers, and like kitchen utensil handles where the wood handle gets glued onto the metal implement. They made those.
Interesting.
So he was at both of those mills until they got shut down because it's cheaper to make that crap in China.
Yeah, it is. Anything else besides those?
He also did advertisement sales for the Lewiston Sun Journal, and he basically just did whatever he needed to make it work.
Gotcha.
So, and then my mom was basically the only job she ever really had. She worked for Maine Handicap Skiing, which is now called Maine Adaptive Sports and Recreation, and they're a nonprofit organization that teaches adults and kids with physical disabilities how to recreate. It provides volunteers for instructions. It provides equipment, and yeah. So she started as a volunteer there when I was in daycare, and then by the time I was in high school, she was the executive director.
Okay. So since you were alone a lot, did you have a good relationship growing up with your folks?
Yeah. There wasn't any animosity. Like my parents were home by 5:30 or 6 at the latest, but from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until they got home, I was kind of under my own power. So I would definitely go through 3 boxes of cereal and a gallon of milk per week, and whatever ice cream was left in the freezer didn't stand a chance when I was home. Typical kid stuff. I think that's one of the reasons why I was encouraged so aggressively to do some sort of after school activity, because my parents wanted me to go somewhere.
Stop eating our cereal, you son of...
Pretty much. So, yeah, but...
At what age did your parents start leaving you on your own accord?
Oh, I was 10.
You were 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 10 was like they would go out to dinner, or they had like a work-related evening function or something like that. I should say that it wasn't just like me at home in a cabin in the woods somewhere. We lived next door to my grandparents, so I could walk or ride my bike, or during the winter I could sled down to my grandparents' house if I ever needed anything.
Right.
Or they would just come up and get me.
And at what age did your parents be like, all right, you need to get the heck out of here?
So sports started my freshman year of high school. So until high school, I did not participate in I shouldn't say that, in any school extracurricular activities. Before that, I was in Cub Scouts, and I took Taekwondo for a couple of years and stuff like that. Don't ask me to do any moves. I don't remember any of it.
Okay.
But so there were some activities that I would like take the bus to after school. So instead of taking the bus home, I would take the bus to Taekwondo, or my parents would pick me up from the house and drop me off at Cub Scouts. But the school activities didn't start until my freshman year of high school.
Gotcha. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
I actually don't remember having a hyper focus on like, this is going to be my career. I remember for my 8th grade yearbook, which I never even got a copy of, they gave us like these surveys that were like, what do you want to do when you grow up? I was like, I don't know. I was like, join the army, I guess. Like, I don't know. I knew that I was not a good college candidate. So I knew that I was either going to join the military or join the workforce. Like, it was going to be one of those two things.
What made you choose the Coast Guard?
So there was a gentleman who had adopted children with physical disabilities, and he was bringing them to my mom's program. But he was in the Coast Guard, and he told me about it, and I was like, "Yeah, that sounds pretty cool." And so when my junior year of high school came around, my parents were like, "Okay, it's time to get serious. What are you gonna do?" Because in a nicer way of saying it, you're not going to stay in our house after you graduate high school. So I was like, well, can we go talk to the Coast Guard recruiter? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. And then it kind of just history wrote itself after that.
Was there any interest in the maritime or navy aspect of it, like ships?
Well, I mean, I was on ships.
Right, but is that another reason that you were interested in that versus something more
So
land-based?
my grandfather went to Maine Maritime Academy. That was his college that he went to when he was that age. So and I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, with them being right down the hill from us. So that was also an influencer there for sure, before influencing was a thing. Um, but yeah, mostly it was like, okay, so you're telling me that I go through boot camp and I survive that, and then I get a paycheck and healthcare and housing as long as I just do my job. Okay, I think I can handle that at least for a couple of years. So that was the fastest, most guaranteed way to be out on my own, and also kind of like ease myself into adulting a little bit, because they do tell you when to pretty much do anything. So
Right. Did you like the idea of national service?
yeah, there was definitely, because my junior year came around, and that's when 9/11 happened. So there was definitely like a sense of duty that I had to the country and to everybody, really. When that happened, that pretty much cemented it for me that I was going to do something military wise.
Interesting. So you were part of that generation where that was a pivotal
Oh,
time.
that was like a yeah, that was a shocking time, because we were, I mean, being a junior in high school, you're old enough to process all that. And I was also really into current events, because I was in this really cool current events class in high school, with Mr. Raymond. Shout out if you ever see this. And he was really encouraging us to like read the news and process it and talk about it in class, or write a political cartoon or anything like that. So we were already really in tune to understanding that stuff. And then when 9/11 happened, it was like holy smokes, okay, so this is real. And it was like, okay, and we're pretty much 100% going to war at this point.
All right. So going back to semi childhood, where did you watch any movies?
Um, so because I was an only child, and I also did live kind of out in the woods, I didn't have a lot of access to just going over to friends' houses. So my consumption of media was way different than other kids my age. So I was watching like kids shows way later into life than some of the other kids were. Yeah, so I didn't have the same media consumption as my peers. And then our evening regiment at our house was like eat dinner, watch the local news, and then watch whatever network Tom Brokaw was on. I can't remember. I think it was ABC or NBC. It was NBC. That's the Peacock, right?
I have no idea.
Okay. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah, it was NBC. Watch NBC, and then Wheel of Fortune, and then Jeopardy. Like that was, and then, which I now people are like, oh, limit screen time and this, that, and the other thing, but consuming some sort, and this was before news was sensationalized and commercialized. It was like real reporting, so it was good to, for someone my age, it was good to see what's actually happening out in the world and the impacts of everything.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you're not going to learn much from Wheel of Fortune, but Jeopardy is good for random knowledge too. It's certainly helpful for trivia nights sometimes.
Which we have to do at some point.
We should do that sometime.
Can you describe? So you weren't exposed necessarily to the '80s superhero stars.
No, I was never into comic books or superheroes or anything like that. The only real exposure I've had to anything like that has been like the modern Avengers movies and stuff like that. But no, I never had like posters of Superman on my wall or anything like that. I didn't watch Ninja Turtles or Power Rangers or anything like that.
What about like Sylvester Stallone or Schwarzenegger?
I mean, yeah, there was definitely some movie influence there for sure, but nothing, no, like I wasn't, and even to this day, I still have a hard time identifying who some Hollywood stars are when they're in movies. I'm like, okay, I know I've seen this person and they played this role in this movie, but I have no idea who they are.
Can you describe what your room looked like when you were 16?
So when I was 16, I had a bed that my dad had made himself that had dresser drawers under it. So I had like a storage bed. And then I had my closet with my clothes in it and some random golf clubs that I had collected, because when you live on a giant hill, there's nothing more fun than whacking golf balls as far as you can off the side of the hill. And then I had a desk with the family computer on it, and which was hooked up to dial-up. So it was, I mean, there wasn't much happening there. It was mostly just a word processing machine for school. And I had mostly like ski posters and stuff like that on my walls. I didn't, like I said, no superhero posters or movie stars or anything like that. It was like skiing, mountain bikes, and airplanes and stuff like that, cars.
How did you get into planes?
When I was growing up, my grandparents had a camp on an island in Sebago Lake, and their neighbor commuted to work in a seaplane. And every so often, if I was there and he flew in, I'd run down to the end of his dock and stand there with my thumb out. And sometimes, if he felt like it, at the end of his workday, he would take me for a ride.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So, and then my uncle took me to the air show at Owl's Head Museum one time, and that was like, okay, this is pretty dang cool.
Is that where they have like the Spitfires and some World War II planes?
Yeah, it's a great big. So it's like it's a transportation museum, so it's more like a transportation show. So they have an air show, but it's also a car show, and motorcycles and bicycles and any sort of like antique transportation stuff. So, but yeah, they had all kinds of stuff there.
They have a train there as well, right? Am I thinking of a different museum?
You might be thinking of the Train and Trolley Museum. The way that they transport guests around at the Owlhead Transportation Museum is in a Model T. They have a Model T pickup, well, not pickup, they have a Model T like farm truck with a big flatbed on it, and it has bench seats on it, and then they transport guests around in that.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different one.
Okay.
Maybe I haven't been there. I thought I did. We could do an episode there.
We could take the show on the road.
In a Model T.
They'll probably be like, you can do that, but you can't drink on campus. And we'll be like, oh.
Okay, we'll just drink this water.
Okay.
We're not going to do that.
We're not going to do that.
No, that'd be really rude.
We will have waters.
Spicy waters.
No. Maybe we'll do an episode there if we do energy drinks.
Nope. You lost me at that. It's either beer.
I've got this nice case of White Monster.
White Russian, and I'm in. When did you get your first girlfriend?
So my first girlfriend was in high school. I was a junior, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was...
Because up until that point, girls were just like peers. They weren't like any sort of... I didn't have it in my head of like, oh, I need to get a girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't like one of those. I wasn't a stud back then.
I can relate.
I'm still not now.
I would disagree. I think your wife would too.
Thank you.
So your interests were independent, individual sports.
Yeah, yeah.
What were your, besides the current events class, what else were you most interested in?
Oh, I was a terrible student. I literally only liked that one class.
Okay.
Yeah, I that was it.
So like minimal effort kind of deal.
Oh,
everything
and
else?
well, and I don't play instruments now, and don't ask me to read music. But I was also in the band, and that was one of my favorite classes too.
Okay. What'd you play?
I played the contrabass clarinet.
Nice.
It's 6 feet tall, and you need to sit on a bar stool to play it.
And you don't think you could play like a C note?
Now,
Yeah.
you'd have to give me a little bit, but I could probably figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We weren't a marching band. We were a concert band because my band teacher hated marching band when she was going through it. So she was like, we will not have a marching band. We will set up and play at sports events, but we will not march around.
Was your band any good?
Yeah. Yeah, we were. I would say we were pretty good. And we were pretty good considering the fact that my freshman year was the first year ever of a real music program at the school. So by the time my senior year rolled around, we really had pulled it together, and we were quite good. I think we had several kids go to states for whatever the states is for musical instruments.
I think it is all states.
Yes, it's all state. That's the one. Yep. I didn't go, mostly because there was nobody else playing my instrument, so they really didn't have a spot for me to go.
So you're the winner.
So, but I was also, all states was the same week as the state finals race for skiing. So I had to pick one or the other, and I went with skiing.
Gotcha. What were your evenings like?
Well, like I said, it was, news and game shows, and then homework and bed. It was pretty lame. I didn't, I did have a car my junior and senior year, but I would occasionally go to my girlfriend's house on the weekend and eat dinner with her parents or whatever, but there wasn't a whole lot of off the homestead time, just because we did live a few miles out of town, and eventually that's just kind of like, I want to be home because I like it here. So
Okay. Did you and your folks ever take any trips when you were growing up?
So when I was 3 or 4, we went to Bermuda. I have very seldom memory of that trip. It was just, you're at that age where you're just too young to remember that stuff. Apparently, within 15 minutes of us being checked into the hotel, I ran away to the playground. Like, my parents went in and they put their bags down and turned around, and I was gone. And I had somehow made my way to the playground out in front of the hotel. So that was our introduction to being there.
Did they call like a search party, or did they just find you?
I mean, my dad says that they were cool, calm, and collected, and they just walked down and got me, but I'm pretty sure they were like, shit, where'd our kid go? So I'm sure there was some dramatic searching happening for a little bit.
Yeah.
But the playground was good. And
There's
the beach
that.
was good.
Yeah.
Oh, and also the ride in the taxi from the airport to the hotel was my first time ever being in a car with electric windows. So the whole time from the airport to the hotel, the window was up and down and up and down and up and down the whole way. Until my dad was like, okay, we need to put him in the middle seat.
We're putting you back with the manuals.
Put him in the trunk.
All right.
And then we did 2 trips to British Columbia, Canada, to go skiing at Whistler and Blackcomb. So we did that once.
What was the name?
Whistler and Blackcomb.
Whistler. Okay.
So two mountains, 1 resort. So, but you had to pick one or the other because there was no trail or access from one to the other. So you were like, we're gonna ski Whistler today and Blackcomb tomorrow. So you had to pick one or the other based on the day, not based on your ticket, but based on which side you wanted to go to that day. Now I believe there's a tram that goes from one to the other, and I know that there is a ski touring trail that goes from one to the other, but back when we went, there wasn't anything like that. So we went my 8th grade year, and then we went the spring, like the April vacation between my junior year and senior year as my graduation trip.
Were your parents into skiing, or was that just
Yeah, they were. So skiing is what brought my dad from uh, Connecticut to Maine. Was he was, and it's funny now knowing my dad because back then he was like this crunchy granola hippie guy, and cross country skiing brought him to Maine from Connecticut. And then my mom's family, um, they bought the house. So the house that was their house when I was growing up was their ski house. So they lived in Portland, but they bought this rundown old farmhouse in Bethel, and that was their ski house to go to Mount Abram in because this was before Sunday River was even a thing.
Yeah, gotcha. Interesting.
So yeah, they were both. We were definitely a ski family for sure.
I'm enjoying this beer.
Okay, good. Me too. It's good. Cheers. Cheers to memory loss.
Well, that's why we're doing these episodes, is so we have
So
something.
we can remember.
We'll be like, oh yeah.
Also, my dad's family was associated with the mob.
Actually,
Yeah.
are you allowed to talk about that, or is that
Yes.
something we should do off camera?
Yes, because it's like a 6th degree of separation. So one of my family members, and I meant to ask my parents this question before we did this, and I totally forgot. So I think it was my grandmother's either brother or something like that. Anyway, I'll ask them later. Um, One of the relatives on my dad's side was a watchmaker.
Okay.
A legit, real watchmaker, not like a watchmaker that made Tommy guns. He was just a watchmaker. And he fixed all the watches for the Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut mobsters. So when he died, the FBI was at his funeral taking down license plate numbers.
That's awesome. And that's where the story ends?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, that was it.
No, that's fine.
You can stick that in someplace like random facts or whatever.
It
But
sounds like it could be a movie.
it might be.
You'd have to dramatize it a little bit more.
Yeah, we need some help from Mark Wahlberg. Looking at you, Mark.
Maybe Will Ferrell. I mean, you guys do pretty good together, so might as well include him.
I don't know if there's a comedy in that. Anyway,
No, but it could be a more dramatic role.
maybe Mark Wahlberg and Ben Affleck.
Well, then you should include Matt Damon. Because Matt Damon and Ben Affleck have been creating movies together since...
True. They're hunting something.
Oh, Good Will Hunting.
That's the
yeah,
one.
that's it.
Okay.
So anyways.
Sorry. We're 3/4 of a really, really high test beer deep.
We have to do another one of these. Holy shit.
We don't have to. I would never.
No, we're going to.
I would never force you to consume a beverage you didn't want to.
Oh, yeah, you're... Ow, Joel, stop twisting my arm.
My hands are off.
Joel! Okay.
We have witnesses. You forgot we were filming this.
Not if I cut it.
Shit, you're the editor. Cut to me and having you in a headlock.
Drink some fucking beer. We can actually do
That
that.
would be funny.
We'll get Jesse in here and be like, all right, you just hold the camera.
Break it up! Break it up!
All right, so I think it would be a good time to go back into the Coast Guard. So
Okay,
we already talked. You went into training.
I did. I went into basic training September 10th of 2002. So 1 day shy of the first 9/11 anniversary. I was in boot camp. We did a lot of fucking push-ups.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what is boot camp like for the Coast Guard?
So, like, do you want just like a general overview or? All right, so
The interviewee. You can talk whatever you want about.
for the majority of us, we all flew in from different parts of the country.
Where is the training? Where's the boot camp?
If the boot camp's in Cape May, New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Yeah, so we all flew in, I think, to Newark, but I can't remember. So we all flew in, and there's like a, for lack of better terms, I'm sure it's changed by now, because this was a long time ago.
23 years.
Yeah, thank you for that. There was like a corral that all the boot camp incoming boot camp people would meet in, and we're like, "Oh, hey, how's it going? I'm so and so," and I was like the only kid from Maine.
That
So,
makes sense.
which well, it's kind of surprising actually if you think about how much coastline Maine has, and the fact that we have 3 Coast Guard stations just in this state,
Yeah.
and also the heavy presence of a fishing industry. You would think there would be more applicants, but there weren't. So you get put in a corral, and then you get put on a tour bus, I think we had 3 buses going to boot camp, where like our bus driver, you just have a civilian bus driver. Like there's no one from the actual boot camp on the bus. He's like, I think we watched like Days of Thunder or something like that on the screen on the TV. Yeah, we watched the movie Days of Thunder and something else I can't remember on the way to boot camp, and everybody's like, joking around and be like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be so hard, like boot camp. I'm such a badass. I can do 1,000 push-ups. Look at me, guys." And then we pull up to the gate, and the gate slides open, and it was dead silent on the bus, because then everybody was like, "Oh, we're really doing this." And then once you go through those gates, they own your ass.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what was it like in the 1 year since 9/11 for you?
So it was, and I know that someone from like the Army or the Marines and be like, "No, Coast Guard, wimps," or whatever. But it was intense. It's a mental and physical game. So I don't think that the time frame of being from 9/11 really changed much, but it was definitely like more of a focus of, instead of just being like, yeah, we go out and we rescue fishermen that got in trouble, which we do, but it was a lot more based around like, we're going to do real firearms training because there's a real potential that we're going to have to actually do something.
Yeah, because the Coast Guard, I mean, you rescue
Mostly a rescue service.
mostly rescue, but also trying to interfere with the drug operations.
Yeah, and so when I joined, the Coast Guard was actually under the Department of Transportation.
Mm-hmm.
And because the Department of Homeland Security had not been invented yet.
Is that where it is now?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so now it's under the same department as like the people that feel up your balls when you go through security at the airport.
That's the TSA for you folks at home.
Yeah. So, and also Border Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
But back then we were, for whatever reason, part of the federal branch of the DOT.
How long was boot camp?
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Yep. Yep, 8 weeks in scenic, rainy, cold, and also hot Cape May, New Jersey.
What were some of your trainings like in terms of, so you had the physical element of just making sure?
Yeah, I mean, like push-ups and running and sit-ups and, I mean, basic stuff like that. There was a lot of pool time. It was helpful for me to know how to swim. And there were a shocking number of people in my boot camp company that were joining the Coast Guard that did not know how to swim. I thought that was a prerequisite.
That's fascinating.
It's not. So they were like, everybody into the pool. And this is the same pool that they do like diver training in. So it's 15 to 20 feet deep.
Yeah.
We had a few sinkers.
Hey.
There's no shallow end.
I'm going to go join the Coast Guard, but I don't know how to swim.
Right. The joke is that you have to be 6 feet tall to join the Coast Guard. That way you can wade to shore if your boat sinks.
Now, how far is it from shore to the international waters? Isn't it like
12 miles.
Is it 12 miles?
Yeah.
So a little bit more than 6 feet?
I know the internet. Once we become a multinational podcast, will correct me on this. I believe it's 12 miles. I know that you have to be 12 miles offshore before you can discharge sewage out of your boat.
That's a fascinating tie-in to what you do with your wastewater management. Interesting. Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's 12 miles. Let me look that up.
Yeah, let's double check. Let's do a fact check.
How far off
12 miles sounds right. I was going to say 15, but
international water? Yeah, it is 12 miles.
hey, nice
Or
job.
22.2 kilometers.
We'll go with 12 miles.
Yeah,
because we're in America.
Because fuck the metric system.
Although there's the more smart method.
So within 12 miles of the United States coastline is territorial sea.
Right. And that's where you would operate.
No.
Well, okay, let's backtrack.
To the majority, I shouldn't even say the majority. Okay.
Some.
So there's different facets of the Coast Guard.
Mhm.
So we have aviation, which is like helicopters and airplanes. So I think back then, actually, I believe back then, I think it was 67 feet for the Coast Guard was the definition of a boat versus a ship. So like if the Coast Guard owned a 65-foot long boat, it was considered a boat. But if they had a 110-foot long ship, it was a ship.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's go over like some of the operations that the Coast Guard does. So they do search and rescue.
A lot.
Right. Search and rescue, drug operations.
Search and rescue,
and
drug interdiction.
Interdiction is the phrase.
We also do we assist and work alongside with Customs and Border Patrol. We do fisheries inspections.
Mm-hmm.
So anything from stopping somebody to see if they have a fishing license to stopping a commercial fishing vessel to make sure that their logs are all up to date and that their boat or ship is up to date with all of its safety gear and everything like that. If there's ever an incident at sea, we have inspectors that go out and check the boats or the ships for compliance and maybe what caused the accident. So talking to witnesses, inspecting the vessel itself, all that, everything. Like we were even involved in that carbon fiber billionaire submarine thing that imploded on itself a couple of years ago.
That's not the Titanic one?
No, the Ocean Gate. Ocean Gate?
The Titanic one.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
The one that attempted to go to the Titanic. Well, I mean, it's there now.
Yeah. Parts of it.
Parts of it are there now. But, yeah. So, and then also a lot of scientific operations, which is mainly what the vessels that I was on was focused on, was science stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the aviation is just like it's more of an asset to those missions there.
Okay. So when you were doing your 8 weeks of training, how much was done to prepare you for your role?
Zero.
So
when you're like, if you join the Army, you go, or any of the other branches pretty much, you go straight from boot camp to your specialist school. So you go from boot camp where they break you down as an individual and then build you back up as a member of the armed forces. I mean, the Coast Guard does that too. But instead of saying, okay, now you're going to, and you have to like pick your job right then and there. Usually you've picked it before you even went to boot camp, and then you immediately go to your specialist school. The Coast Guard does it differently, where you actually go to your first unit as a non-rate. So it's like, yep, you're a member of the Coast Guard, but you don't actually have a job.
okay.
And so you either pick fireman or seaman.
I'm really proud of you.
And I was seaman.
Yeah,
because
you were.
I thought I wanted to be a bosun's mate, which is like, you would think that it's the person that drives the boat and does all the cool stuff. You're a glorified janitor and painter. So I changed my mind on that pretty rapidly.
Yeah.
So I switched over to engineering. So I became a damage controlman. So that's what I went to school for. So you are a welder, a pipe fitter, a plumber, a carpenter, a firefighter, a chemical, biological, radiological warfare defense specialist. I'm missing something there. Yeah, and also if the boat gets a hole in it and starts to sink, that's your job to make that not happen.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
You were telling me, I think when we were going down to my PT appointment, about you were the only person on one of your ships
Yep.
in charge of
I was the only person that was
avionics.
certified to be in the what we call the baked potato suit for when there's a helicopter landing on deck.
Okay. And describe the baked potato soup, which I already know, but
So the baked potato suit,
it's just
we're
the
back.
TV resetting.
Okay, so the baked potato suit is it's called a proxy suit because you can get within a close proximity to a aircraft fuel fire, and it looks like a silver foil suit because it's very reflective, so it reflects a lot of the heat away from you, and it has the gold coated helmet shield like you see on a NASA space suit. I'm sure not that fancy though, and yeah, so you would wear that in case a fire broke out on deck, so that way you could wade through the puddles of flaming aircraft fuel to get people out of the aircraft. And it allegedly kept you safe.
Allegedly.
Like you probably weren't going to get too burnt.
Just like a couple of third,
Like
but probably
charbroiled.
second. Maybe some second.
Maybe, like think of a potato wrapped in a piece of tin foil. Like it still gets cooked, but it takes a little bit longer, and it holds the juices in. I can't believe I just said that.
Okay, so you leave camp.
Yeah.
And you
I
are
went to my
non-rate.
first unit as a non-rate.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where were you? Can I say deployed? Is that the right terminology? Where were you
So I was
stationed?
I was stationed on the Coast Guard
That's
cutter
smart.
Polar Sea, and then as a ship, we got deployed. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So stationed in Seattle on a boat that was hardly ever on a ship that was hardly ever in Seattle. So I took 2 weeks of leave after boot camp at home, and then flew to Seattle only to find that my boat was not there. So I had to wait about 3 weeks in Seattle at the base, vacuuming and picking weeds out of the parking lot, and questioning why I joined the military to vacuum and pick weeds out of the parking lot. And then they put me on a plane to Sydney, Australia to meet the ship.
They didn't do that sooner. That's so fast.
Well, I would have been just sitting in Sydney in a hotel, which sounds way better, but much less cost
I was
effective.
going to say not for the U.S. government.
Not for the taxpayer. So, yeah. And also, when I got to Sydney, the ship also was not there either.
Nice.
I had to stand on the pier, and it's really hot in the sun. And I had to stand there and wait for the ship to show up for about 3 hours. Luckily, someone from the Royal Australian Navy was like, "Hey, mate, there's some shade over here. If you'd like to stand in the shade." And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And also, if you can tell me where the bathroom is, that would be good too."
What is the term of enlistment for the Coast Guard?
So minimum, when I joined, the minimum was 4 years.
Okay.
There was at a time during, there was a time in the mid 2000s or like towards almost the 2010 era where they were starting to have some enlistment number crashes. So they were starting to, some branches, I don't think the Coast Guard ever did it, but some branches ended up doing a 2-year enlistment.
Okay.
But to join and get the full effect of joining and also being able to get the full value of your GI Bill, 4 years was the minimum commitment for active duty.
Right.
Not if you were an officer.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you meet Kathy? So
So
we'll go back to the Coast Guard. But
when did I meet her the first time?
yeah.
We were little kids.
Okay.
Yeah. She started skiing at the program that my mom was running when she was like 5. I think she was 5 because I believe the minimum age was 6, and they like snuck her in under the radar.
Okay.
Because her nurse practitioner was my aunt. So
I
she
forgot about that.
called my mom and was like, "Hey, I've got this perfect candidate for your program. She's too young. You should let her go anyway." So that's how that happened.
Okay.
Yeah, and we would run into each other occasionally at the program, and then both of our schools being within an hour and a half to 2 hours of each other, we would end up at the same ski races together. So we would bump into each other there too. So, and then we didn't, I mean, there was no romantic interest. I was too hyped up on ADHD medications to really even like to have an engaging conversation with anybody at that point. So,
So you were in the Coast Guard for 6 years.
yep,
Okay,
that makes more sense.
got it. So your first deployment, you go to Seattle, you sit around for 3 weeks, and they're like, "Oh, JK, we're going to send you to Sydney."
Well, no, it was fly to Seattle and get on your boat. And then I got there and they're like, JK, it's not here. So then I sat around for 3.5 weeks. They
Okay.
flew me to Sydney. Then I waited another 3 hours for the ship to show up. And then I got on the ship. And the reason why the ship was in Sydney was to take on 1.1 million gallons of diesel fuel
Nice.
because we were headed to Antarctica.
And were you the only crew member they were taking on as well?
Yes. So 3 or 4 other people from my boot camp company only took a week of leave before going to the ship. So they actually flew to Honolulu and got on the ship there. So they were there for 3 weeks before I got there. So I was the only new crew member incoming in that stop in Sydney.
And at this point, you were a non-rate.
Yep. I was an E2.
You were an E2, and you were considering becoming a bosun.
I was like dead set because I had not seen what they do yet.
Yep.
So I hadn't gotten any real world experience in what they actually do. I think it's the better way to go because it's better to see what the job is before you actually say, yes, that's what I want to do. Because once you say, yes, that's what I want to do, you can't change your mind.
Right.
So so I got there, started living the non-rate life, which is you're either chipping paint off or putting paint on. The only actual cool part of being a non-rate in what they call the deck department is you actually get to drive the ship. So when you're on watch, you're holding the helm on the bridge and you're steering the ship.
That's cool.
It is pretty cool. It's not as cool as you would think because really what you're doing is you're keeping that dot and that dot on the compass lined up with each other.
Yeah.
So, you're not really driving the ship. You're keeping the compass lined up.
It's not as cool as like a sailboat or something where you can see the change.
Oh, no, you can see the change.
Maybe that's not the right phrasing.
So, I mean, you are like dynamically steering the ship.
Yeah.
So just for context, this is an icebreaker. It's shaped like a football. Like under the waterline, it's shaped like a football. It doesn't have a keel. It just has a rounded bottom. And then the bow comes down at an angle like this, and then down at an angle like this. So the whole purpose is for the ship to hit the ice, ride up on the ice, and then break down through the ice. So with being no keel, there's also no stability. So you are dynamically steering the ship because at times you're rolling up to 75 degrees off axis.
What does that look like?
So you've
Or
got
feel like?
90,
Yep.
45, 75.
So you're going to hold on to something when you're like this?
Well, there's handles across the overhead stuck to the ceiling, which is what we call the overhead.
Okay.
So you would hold on to a grab rail here, and then your hips, you're standing, there's no chair. So then you would have your hips locked into these like little bars and one hand on the helm with your feet spread apart in like a deep, wide, low base, and you're just doing your best to hold the compass where it's supposed to be.
Sounds kind of cool.
It's
scary.
Cool and nerve-wracking all at the same time because like you've got the OOD, which is the officer on the deck, like yelling at you like, keep that compass bearing where it needs to be, or like mind your helm is what they say, but it's just like keep your shit together. And you're like, I'm trying and the boat's doing this, and you've got the person. There's actually another job that you had to do was lookout, where you have to stand on top of the bridge out in the weather and look for things that you could potentially run into when you're 1,400 miles offshore.
Yeah.
Like other boats and buoys and whales and stuff like that. So you had, and there was a sound tube. And it's literally just a tube with a funnel on each end, and you would yell back and forth to each other through this tube.
I like that technology has not changed.
No, that actually, yeah. That's the most basic form of communication is just a hole in the boat that you yell through.
Yep.
So you're like, I see a boat at 110 degrees on the port side, and you're like, Roger that, and then you tell the OOD, and you're yelling back and forth. If you needed to get the attention of the lookout, there was a buzzer on the ceiling, and it is so loud because sometimes it's really like screaming wind up there, so you need to be able to get the person's attention.
Right.
Sometimes you would just hit it at 2 a.m. just to mess with them. And they'd be like, What do you need? What? And I'm just like, just making sure you're awake.
How long were watches? Were they 2 hours?
So it was 4 hours.
4 hours.
And then you would alternate. So you would do an hour on lookout, an hour on helm, an hour on lookout, an hour on helm.
With the same guys, so you're going back and forth?
No, well, I mean, typically, yeah, there would be a watch team. So the lookout and the helmsman would be the same person, but you would always be on with a different OOD and a different QMO, which is the quartermaster of the watch, and that's like the charts guy. So the person that would actually do the sextant and the rulers and all that stuff on the paper chart, just in case the GPS failed.
Gotcha. So you're going from Sydney
to Tasmania.
to Tasmania.
Yeah, we went to Hobart, Tasmania.
Okay.
That was pretty cool. That was more of like a one last let's enjoy ourselves before we get to Antarctica, because then there's absolutely nothing to do down there type of thing. So it was like a field trip almost.
Okay.
So we went to Hobart, Tasmania, which is on the southern end of Tasmania. So you kind of like went down and back up in. And then we spent a week there, and then we headed down to Antarctica.
At what point during your first... Well, at that point you're deployed because you're on a ship. At what point did you decide, oh, hell no, I'm not being a bosun's mate?
1 week.
1 week.
1 week.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was pretty quick.
This job sucks.
Yep. Was it between Sydney and Tasmania, or was
between Tasmania and the ice? So you hit ice before you hit Antarctica. My room on the ship that I stayed in, there's 2 rooms for non-rates, and they're both 12 people per room, and you sleep on triple high bunks. So the deck department 12-man was full, so I was put in the engineering 12-man. So my off time was spent with the engineers instead of the deck department. So by hanging out with them, I got to know the damage controlmen on the ship, and then that was like, okay, this is more my style. This is more what I want to do. I want to like get my hands dirty, fix things, work on things. Like this is more what I want to do rather than chip paint and reapply paint and mop.
What is the learning process when you have finally decided? So you're like, I want to do engineering. What is the learning process like for that?
So there is no learning process until you go to that school.
Okay.
So you put your name on the list to go to school, and then you're pretty much just stuck at your unit until your name comes up on the list to go to school. So I actually did 2 trips from Washington to Antarctica and back in the time that it took my name to come up on school.
And how long of a time frame is that?
Roughly 2 years.
2 years.
Yep.
So 2 years as a non-rate?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
Is that similar to some of your other classmates from...
So, no, because some of them had jobs where you could actually get your specialty training on the ship. So they were able to like do on the job training essentially. And then I on purpose also did not do the on the job training. 1, because I wanted to go to the school, and 2, because it's so rare to get on the ship that I was on. I wanted to go again. I wanted to go to Antarctica again because it's so cool and special down there that I was willing to wait the extra year to do that again. So, and then some of them went to other schools where the list was not as long, so they would put their name on the list and they'd be gone in like 6 months. We had 2 functions. We had a small science laboratory on the ship, and we had a small complement of scientists. I believe They were from Woods Hole, Massachusetts. Um, at the, I think it's NOAA that's down there. So they came with us and they did some scientific experiments like water sampling, air temperature, sea state, that sort of stuff, and some ice coring and things like that. But our main function was to break a channel from the open ocean to McMurdo Station so that we could have a fuel tanker come in and refuel the fuel stocks at McMurdo. Every year they burn approximately 8,000 gallons of fuel down there, or sorry, 8 million gallons of fuel down there to generate power, operate vehicles and aircraft. Um, and then we had to have a cargo ship come in and they would unload a couple 100,000 tons of supplies. So it's vehicles and scientific equipment, food, toilet paper, everything that you would need to run a small town. And then they would onload all of the broken down cars and the broken down equipment and the garbage and all of that stuff, put it on the ship and take it back.
How far behind were the fuel tanker and the cargo ship? How far behind were they from your ship?
They were pretty far behind us because we never knew how long it was going to take us to break through the ice. Also, if they get to the edge of the ice and we're not done yet, they can just sit out there and do donuts and wait for us to be done. I actually don't remember where they were coming from. They were not coming from the U.S. I know that. Some of the stuff that was on them may have come from the U.S., but that's not where they left from.
Gotcha.
But it varies on how long it takes you to get from the edge of the ice to McMurdo Sound.
So you did 2 of those.
Yep.
And then afterwards, you decide to do engineering and you go to the school.
So after I'd already decided.
Yep.
So then after we got back from our second deployment to Antarctica, we were in the shipyard doing a refit. Every time we go down to Antarctica, it really beats the boat up bad.
Yeah.
Actually, my first deployment, we have 3 propellers on the ship. We lost a blade off of one of those propellers. So we completed an entire tour in Antarctica with 2/3 of our horsepower. So every time you go down, you have to come back, and they immediately put you in dry dock and lift the ship up out of the water and start tearing it apart to refit everything.
Wow.
So we were in dry dock, and my name came up to go to school. So I packed all my stuff into my '89 Ford Ranger and drove across country solo to. Well, I first went to Maine to say hi to my family, and then I drove down to Virginia to go to school in Yorktown.
Okay. That answered that question.
Yorktown, Virginia.
Yorktown.
Yeah.
That's a good spot.
It is. It's very historical.
Yeah.
You literally have to drive through a Civil War battlefield to get to where the school is.
I love that. I love that. All right, so you do that, and then what is that school like?
So that school is 7 weeks. You start out with welding and cutting, and then you go into you go into CBR, which is chemical, biological, radiological stuff, where you have to learn about decontaminating ships, decontaminating people. You have to go through the gas chamber and take your mask off inside the gas chamber, just so that you can see like how well the suit works. It works pretty good against riot gas, apparently. And then it's firefighting, and there's a reason. So if you do firefighting before you do CBR, you risk smoke inhalation and microburns from doing firefighting or trading, and you don't want that exposed to chemical and biological stuff in that portion of training. So that's why those 2 are in a very specific order. And then at the end is carpentry. 2 weeks before you graduate from school, you find out where you're going to your next unit.
Okay. And what did you find out?
So because I was on a ship for 2 years, I had quote unquote extra points already built up. So I had more of a pick of where I wanted to go than other people in the class. But Because I had more sea time than most of the people on the ship, so I think I had the number 2 or 3 pick out of the class, and fortunately, number 1 and number 2 wanted to go places that I had no interest in going, so I pretty much had the pick of whatever I wanted to do. So I picked going back to Seattle to a land station. So I was actually at the unit that was doing the repairs on my old boat.
Oh, that's funny.
So it was kind of cool going back and seeing everybody they had gone to sea with
Yep.
and working on the same ship. So when they were in dry dock, we were on the dry dock with them, cutting and welding and refitting and that stuff. So
Neat.
yeah,
How long were you in Seattle?
I was in Seattle for a total of 9 years. Well, no, for a total of 8 years, I guess.
Okay. Okay. So then at what point did your relationship with Kathy intercede with your Coast Guard experience?
So that was when I was at the land station in Seattle. So I came home for vacation and for Christmas and New Year's, and that was our date right there. And then we had a long distance relationship for like 3 months, and like the typical person in the military, you're like, we should get married right now. So we got married pretty quickly, and then she moved out to Seattle with me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where were you based in an apartment, or were you on base?
No, so the funny thing about the Coast Guard is that we are the redheaded stepchild of the military, so we don't have bases that have housing.
Gotcha.
So we were in an apartment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it a nice apartment?
It was, yeah. It was a nice 1 bedroom apartment, but the location was good because we were 1 block from the entrance to the largest park in Seattle. So we were right there where we could recreate, which was kind of nice, but also with traffic, half-hour drive to the base. If there had not been the current infrastructure that was in the city, like if it essentially the same distance as driving from here to Stratton. So it was like a 5 mile drive, but because of traffic, it was a half hour. So it was actually faster for me to ride my bicycle to work than it was to drive.
Is that what you ended up doing a lot?
Yeah. Yeah. Unless it was like a torrential downpour or snowing, I pretty much rode my bike to work.
What was daily life like?
Get up, go to work. We worked tropical routine, which is 7 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it was great because you could drive into the base before traffic really built up, and then you could leave the base before the evening commute traffic built up. So it was pretty good. Then you had the rest of the day to do whatever. So we did a lot of bike riding because we had bike paths right from our apartment. And we also, in that park that was next to our apartment was a beach, so we could go to the beach right from our apartment, which was kind of cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
What were your first few months of married life like?
Well, I would assume that it was just like, well, I shouldn't say just like everybody else. We weren't like your typical couple now because we didn't get to live with each other until we were married. So it was an adjustment period. I had never ever had a roommate before in my apartment. I had plenty of roommates on the ship, but I had never shared an apartment with anybody. So I mean, that obviously took some adjustment time of having someone else in my space. So, but it was someone that I wanted to be in my space. So it wasn't too rough, but it was definitely a learning period for us. Love you, babe.
I want to take it off, but I'm not gonna. Yeah, about time.
Oh, Jesus. I didn't realize you were that far ahead of me.
Done for 20 minutes.
Oh, whoops. I guess I've been doing more talking than drinking.
Well, then, yeah, that's the whole
Right.
point.
Right.
Just as good as I remember.
It's so good.
Wow. I'm not usually a chocolate stout kind of guy.
Great job, Fogtown, with the night nurse. Product placement here.
Sponsorship.
Ah.
Eventually.
No, we paid full price for this.
Yeah. But I mean, eventually, maybe people will send us beer.
Right. Maybe Mountainside Market in Carabasset Valley will give us a sponsorship since that's where we get all of the beer for this episode.
Just saying.
For all of our episodes.
for now, until we go to a brewery.
Right. We will go to a brewery. So if anybody knows a brewery that wants to host a micro niche podcast, hit us up.
We're in. What are some ways the Coast Guard taught you to be an adult?
Because I'm trying to think of a way to say this kindly. It did and it didn't all at the same time. So because the military is the quote unquote easy way versus going to college, there were a lot of people that joined the military that had never adulted before. So it showed sometimes. But they also would hold trainings on how to basically be a grown up. They had like financial trainings on like how credit card works and why you shouldn't lease a vehicle if you're in the military, because then you could get restationed in a completely different state and or country and you can't take that car with you and stuff like that. So they did try to do their best to teach us to be adults. When we were underway, we had, I forget the actual acronym for it, but we had the Navy's version of public television available to us. And it was, I mean, there were real shows on it. Like there was, like football games and baseball games and stuff like that. There was like random Discovery shows like Junkyard Wars and American Chopper. And then there were no like real world advertisements. So it was all advertisements from the Navy. So you were either watching like a Navy Federal Credit Union commercial, or there were commercials that were shot by the Navy with Navy personnel. And they always tried to put like a life lesson in the commercials as well as the actual commercials. So I remember one, it was December, so we're creeping up on Christmas, and it showed this family during Christmas morning, like trying to get crap together, and the kids are running around like crazy, and the dad picks the kid up, and then it cuts to this Navy person that's like, you can shake a package, but you can't shake a baby. I was like, what? Where the hell did that come from?
And that was your first parenting lesson.
I guess. So it was really bad, not even subliminal messaging. It was just like, you can shake a package, but you can't shake a baby.
Wow.
So it was not filmed well. So it looked like an after school special. It was not good. Or it was like, like they would show two people that you could assume that they were in the same unit. By the way, you're not supposed to date anybody that's in your unit. That's frowned upon. But you can date other people in the same service. Like I could date somebody else that was in the Coast Guard, but not on my ship. That happened a lot. But I mean, it didn't happen a lot with me, but it was happening a lot. But it would be, like two sailors would be like, hey, Petty Officer James. Oh, hello, Petty Officer Smith. I noticed that you got some new uniform pants. Those are looking real good. And it would cut to like a blank screen, and then be like this officer all dressed up in their fancy uniform. And they're like, and that is what we call sexual harassment. And you are not allowed to do that. The United States Navy frowns upon sexual harassment. And then it would cut back to the commercial, and she would be like, you're making me uncomfortable with your advances. Please do not talk to me in that way. And it was so awful. It was not good. It'd be like if you and I tried to film a TV commercial right now.
Ours would be so much better.
Yeah. No.
Same.
I mean, ours would definitely be better because we're professionals.
I mean, I did that for a couple of years. So.
Right, yeah. Right. So
now, off of 1 1/4 of these beers, it might be a little bit different of a story.
Right.
Did you have any near-death experiences?
Well, there was that one time where the propeller shaft goes through the hull, there's a seal around it. Not like a seal, but like a gasket.
Mm-hmm.
So the gasket blew out
Oh,
in Antarctica at like 2 a.m. because nothing good ever happens at 2 a.m.
at sea
at sea.
or anywhere, I guess.
Right. So I was in like armpit deep, fresh Antarctic Ocean water inside the boat trying to make it not flood anymore. That was kind of fun. That was really cold. We had to take shifts, like 15-minute shifts in the water and out of the water because we were getting so cold we couldn't function.
Wow.
Yeah, that was neat. We got it to stop.
Good. Good. I like the ending of that story.
So around the prop shaft, there is supposed to be like an inflatable collar. That way, if something like that happens, this collar will inflate with CO2, like a big CO2 cartridge, like a fire extinguisher,
Yep.
and seal it off. Yeah, that didn't work. So we like they pulled the pin on the thing to inflate the boot, and we heard, and all the CO2 went everywhere except for in the boot. So it didn't work.
Of course.
Yeah. So then we had to use like wooden wedges and I think some cut up pieces of a mattress and some other stuff to get it to stop. My first night on the boat, there was a man overboard. Yeah. So like midnight, everybody's asleep. The man overboard alarm goes off, and we're like, I forgot that I was on the third rack, the third bunk of the bunk beds. So I bailed out of my rack and landed on the shoulders of, like, luckily a kid that I had gone to boot camp with, but I was like riding around on him, trying to get off, and I was just like in boxers and a t-shirt and whatever, and we're like putting everything on, and everybody rushes down to what you call to your locker, which is essentially like where your damage control party stages out of. So there were, I think, 3 lockers on that ship. There's always at least 2 because if one gets destroyed, you need to have a backup. So I went down to my locker, and they're like, the thing with the man overboard drill is that they don't tell you who's overboard because they don't want like your best friend to start freaking out. They want you to just do your job.
Right.
So they're like going through the attendance list and blah, blah, blah. And like everybody's like, yep, here, yep, here, yep, here. And we're like, okay, everybody's here. And then they call down to the other locker and they're like, yeah, we're all here. Everybody's checked in. They call up to the bridge and they're like, yeah, we're all here. They call down to main control, which is like the center of engineering on the ship. And they're like, yeah, we're all here. And they're like, okay, well, if we're all here, who's overboard? It was me. I didn't know that you had to check in at the end of your workday or right after dinner to tell the person that's in charge that you're still on the ship. So I caused the man overboard drill.
That was you.
That was a great way to make friends.
So they do the drill.
Yeah.
And
no, it's not a drill.
Oh, no, okay, that was live.
Yeah, it was real.
That was not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Who's on deck to look for the guy overboard and to grab him?
That's the lookout's job.
Okay.
And no, you don't grab them because the lowest deck on the ship is like 25 feet above the water. So they were getting ready to launch the small boat off the side of the ship to go pick up the person that was not actually in the water.
So those became your best friends.
Oh, everybody was my best friend for a couple of weeks there. Yep. So when we do a real man overboard drill, we have a body, like a pretend body. It's like a Rescue Annie CPR doll.
Okay.
In a float suit, and we call it Oscar because when there's a man overboard, you put the phonetical alphabet Oscar flag up on the flagpole. Well, they called me Oscar for about 2 weeks.
That's pretty funny.
Like, hey, Oscar's here. Like, oh, good.
Besides that,
Okay.
what is your favorite memory of the Coast Guard?
Well, there's a lot. Really, it was. So I'm one of the few people that was on the ship that went to Antarctica and also the ship that went to the Arctic. So I've gone to both the southern half of the globe and the northern, tip of the globe, I should say.
You said tip.
It's really neat, like coming out on deck, especially because every once in a while it would just stop the ship because, believe it or not, breaking ice is really loud. So every once in a while, we would like stop the ship and kind of give everybody's eardrums a break. And you could go up on deck. It's super silent. There's no light pollution at night, and it's just like you're just looking around, just surrounded by ice. The northern lights are blazing, or there's penguins. If you're in Antarctica, there's penguins. If you're in the Arctic Circle, there's polar bears. They don't intermingle. I don't care what the movie Happy Feet told you, they lied. So, but yeah, it's just like the more remote places that we went to, the more I liked it.
That says a lot about you. Because we've talked about
Yeah.
living in a homestead.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was not. I mean, I enjoyed my time going into this. Like Sydney is a really cool place to be, and Melbourne, Australia is a really cool place to be. But and obviously Honolulu, Hawaii is that's a neat place to go to visit. I wouldn't want to live there, but I would definitely. I mean, going for a week is pretty cool. But I really liked my time in Alaska, and I really liked my time out in what we call the circles. So either the Antarctic Circle or the Arctic Circle. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And we're back with nuts. Hannaford nuts.
Get some of my nuts.
Teamwork. Next time we should have some sourdough and butter.
I mean, I can start cooking it. I was going to move
I
everything.
hope we're not filming that long. No offense.
If we keep it up at this rate, we will be. We're going to be.
We filmed so long, we baked bread. We
I
didn't,
didn't even have to turn the oven
we
on.
didn't even break it. We just baked it.
So you're in for 4 years.
Yep.
And then you re-out
Yep. For another 4.
for another 4. So you're in 8 years.
Yep.
And at this point, you've met Kathy, married her.
Yep. And then that first Valentine's Day, we decided to have a child.
What made you?
I mean, not have a child, to conceive a child.
to conceive.
Right.
What made you want to have kids?
I don't know. It was just like, okay, if our thought was, why don't we have kids sooner? That way we can not be in our mid 60s when our kids get out of the house. Like, let's do it so that we can raise the kids while we're young and we can do things with them and keep up with them, because I like being able to physically keep up with my kids. And then when they move out of the house, because they're now adults, they're like, we've got some age still on our sides to be able to do other stuff.
Okay.
We always wanted to have kids, but it was more of a question of when. And the when was like, let's just, if we're going to do it, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and do it. Or rip the condom off.
Yeah.
I knew where you were going.
Okay. So after 8 years, you decide to have kids,
Mm-hmm.
but you're in.
No, we weren't married for 8 years.
No, after 8 years in the Coast Guard,
Yes.
you decided to have kids.
Yep.
But you're in for 2 years more.
Mm-hmm.
What do those last 2 years look like?
So I was Polar Sea for 2 years, and then school, and then what we called NESU Seattle, which is Naval Engineering Support Unit, even though we were in the Coast Guard. Don't ask me. So Kathy and I got married during my last year at NESU, and then we went from NESU to the Coast Guard cutter Patoka in Greenville, Mississippi.
Okay.
I don't recommend it. I don't recommend going to that boat. I don't recommend going to that part of the country. Just it's not my jam. It's
Copy.
hot and covered in bugs, and everything there is poisonous, and I just don't want to do it. So we were there for about 6 months, and then I had an opportunity to go to Boston. And so we went to Boston, which was a wise move on our. So Gabby was born in Arkansas. So Mississippi is where the ship was. We lived just across the river in Arkansas. So Gabby was born in Arkansas, and then when she was 2 weeks old, we moved to Boston. Boston was a good move for us because it was a better working environment for me, and we were close to both sets of grandparents, which was also good. I was stationed in Boston for about a year and a half, and then I had the opportunity to go back to Seattle to a different icebreaker. So we decided that we wanted to do that, both as wanting to go back to Seattle again and also for my career, because at that point I was still thinking I was going to be a 20-year career person. So I had to re-enlist in order to take that job. So I re-enlisted for another 4 years. And so we did the re-enlistment, and Gabby was 2, so we packed all of our, well, we took advantage of the Coast Guard moving service where we gave them all of our not valuable stuff for them to move for us. And then we took all of our valuables and some of our camping gear and loaded it up in our 4Runner and drove across country back to Washington State. Nice. We took about 3 weeks to take the drive. So we hammered hard across the country to Wyoming and spent about a week in Wyoming, seeing the sights and doing the whole. We went to Jackson. We stayed in Jackson, Wyoming for 4 days, and then we drove up through Teton National Park and up through Yellowstone Park. We spent the night at the hotel at Old Faithful, and then finished the drive up through Yellowstone. And then we drove. We were planning on stopping at a hotel in Montana somewhere, but then we got the call that our furniture was going to be there the next day, so then we hauled ass from Gardner, Montana to Seattle. And we had also called our old landlord and asked to see if we could get our old apartment back, which we could not get. We were able to get the 2-bedroom next door, so that worked out. So we knew where we were going to live, and we already knew the area, so that worked out real well. So we hauled ass across Montana, Idaho, and Washington just in time to meet the moving truck the next morning to get all of our stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then
then I had about another week of moving time left, so we just got unpacked. We unpacked and got the apartment set up in like 24 hours, and then we just got reacquainted with the area and hung out and did the family stuff. And then I went and checked into the ship, and they were like, "We're leaving in 3 weeks," and I was like, "Cool." So got home, and I was like, "I'm leaving in 3 weeks for 6 to 9 months." Somewhere in that range. So I signed over power of attorney just in case Kathy had to make any big decisions while I was gone, and we spent as much time together as we could. And then Kathy and Gabby came to the pier and drove me to the boat and dropped me off and saw me off, and off we went, going up north.
What was that like?
Which part?
Getting dropped off and saying,
that sucks.
See you later.
That sucks. It's way easier just being like, as a non-rate, being like, oh, well, I live on the ship, so I guess it doesn't matter where it is because my stuff's here. I'm already emailing my parents, so it's not like I'm going to change that routine or anything, so nothing really changed except for our location. It's really hard to say goodbye for at least 6 months with a little kid at home. Yeah, that sucked. I was pretty quiet for the first few days of that deployment. I wasn't alone. There were a lot of people that had a hard time with that one. So, because it was kind of an open-ended deployment, we really didn't know how long we were going to be gone. So,
how many people on board are married or at least have a relationship?
I would say that 75% of the people on the ship have a family. I think that's probably pretty close. 60 to 75% of people on the ship had families.
How long was that deployment?
So that deployment ended up being 357 days.
That's pretty close to it.
Yeah, it's almost a year.
So slightly outside of that range.
Yeah. Yep. That was a long deployment. And the the thing that's not that great about going north, there's a lot of advantages and disadvantages to it. So the advantages is you're still pretty close to the continental United States. So if something happened, you could probably get home within 96 hours, unless you were like way offshore. Um, the thing that is not great about it is that you're not going to Australia and you're not going to Hawaii. The most scenic place you're going to go is Anchorage, Alaska, which is a great place. We went to Anchorage, we went to Seward, we went to Dutch Harbor multiple times, which is where The Deadliest Catch is filmed out of. We went to Juneau, and we saw Barrow, but we never pulled into Barrow because the water's not deep enough for our ship. Mm-hmm. So most of the time it was go to Dutch Harbor, get fuel, and then go up and around Alaska. You go past Big and Little Diomede Island. One is Russia and one is the United States, and they're only about 3 miles apart. So you can't technically take the ship in between the two of them because you're going to be in Russian waters at that point. And then we would go very far north of Alaska and north of Canada and do a lot of that was pretty much just all scientific operations. So we were deploying what they call the Rosette, which is a big contraption with multiple tubes around the outside of it that open at different depths, and they take a water sample at different depths. The cable that was attached to, I think, was 7,000 meters. Big long cable.
That's huge.
So, or they have a dredge that they can drop straight to the bottom of the ocean and take a scoop of ocean bottom and whatever creatures are attached to it and dump it on the deck and take samples and do whatever they do. Basically, they were looking for impacts to the wildlife and the water quality due to oil drilling.
Just for perspective, do you know how many meters are in a mile?
No.
Okay.
Hey Siri. So 1,600 meters per mile.
1,600 meters. So that was 6-ish miles, 6.5 miles
of cable. Yep.
It's a lot longer than I expected. That's what she said.
So when I was on the Polar Sea and we were going south, we had a swim call at the cross of the equator and the international dayline. The water depth was like 16,000 feet.
Which is over 2 miles.
Yeah. So.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But if you need to take a sample of the ocean, and it's a few miles deep, you gotta have the cable to do it. Plus, if that cable breaks, you want extra cable.
So did you have a backup of that device?
So we had two. We had a backup in a normal everyday one. We never ran the equipment. It was all the scientists from Woods Hole, Mass. We operated, the crew, operated the winches for them and stuff like that. But they ran the show as far as the scientific operations. We were just like my department was literally just there to keep the boat functioning, and if it caught on fire, to put the fire out. That was our whole function there.
Yeah. What was the community like on the ship?
So it was a very tight-knit crew. If you take 125 people and you live and work and eat with these and hang out with these people every day for a year, like it's a pretty close-knit community. Sometimes you could see a little bit of toxicity in the community. There was definitely a tendency for people to be like, well, the more hate, discontent, and nicotine and caffeine you're fueled by, the more respected you are. That wasn't what I was all about. So there was times where it was challenging, but for the most part, everybody got along and just did their day-to-day stuff. It was definitely a tighter crew on that ship than the first ship that I was on. So the first ship had 2 mess decks. Actually, I had 4, but 2 crew mess decks. One And for I don't even know why this was established long before I got there. All the operations crew ate on one mess deck, and then engineering ate on the other mess deck. And then there was zero intermingling, and I don't know why.
Interesting.
And then the chiefs had their own mess deck, and the officers had their own mess deck. On my other icebreaker, the Healy that I was on, everybody ate in the same place at the same time. So there was a lot less disconnect. So I would say the crew was better at interpersonal relationships and getting along than the first ship that I was on, because there wasn't as much self-imposed segregation.
Yeah. Are you still in contact with anybody from those days?
Yeah, I've got a couple of good friends that we still shoot messages back and forth. I mean, not on the daily, but we still check in with each other and make sure we're all doing good. If any of them said, "Hey, I need help with something," I wouldn't hesitate to buy a plane ticket and fly out to where they are, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So
That's the best feeling.
yeah, it's you definitely develop some strong relationships with people if you live with them for a year and work with them and vent to them and hang out with them when you're back on shore. And
You're on the Healy for almost a year.
2 years.
2 years.
Mm-hmm. And then
Yeah, what's the process of going from that and then
Getting
eventually
out.
deciding to, like, hey, this is it?
So I did 2 really long deployments on the Healy, and about halfway through the second one, we decided it was time to rethink this process.
You and Kathy.
Yeah.
So how was that? Through email? Were you phone call?
There was no phone calls. It
Okay.
was just email.
Yep.
Other military branches have the ability to FaceTime and video chat from wherever they are, whenever they are. We didn't have that option. In fact, sometimes we would go without email for 2 weeks. Through the process of emailing each other and being like, this isn't really what I want to do for raising like quality kids or having a quality marriage. And I'd always had that feeling in the back of my head, because you would go to somebody's retirement ceremony and like the person that's retiring is crying because they're getting out of their career that they've had forever, but like the wife and kids are just sitting there looking like, or I should say the spouse and kids are just sitting there looking like, God, is this over with yet? And they're just like, they look miserable. Like, I don't want my family to look at me that way in 20 years when I get out. So we came to the conclusion that it was time to get out. So at my 10-year mark, I decided that I was done.
So like 20 years, you can retire and get full bennies, right?
Yeah, you get 50% of your base pay and your medical benefits. So, but 50% of your base pay is less than $2,000 a month. I mean, unless you've really worked your way up through the ranks or you're an officer, you're probably right at $2,000 or less a month before taxes. So they make it sound like a huge benefit, but it's, another $2,000 a month would be incredible right now. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but what did I do and how long did it take to do all that?
And that's 50% after the 20 years?
Yeah. Yeah, and then it goes up, I think, 2.5% every year beyond that. So if you stay in for 30 years, you max out at 75% of your base pay.
That's still a huge time commitment.
It's a gigantic time commitment. And at that point, you're almost too old to start another career, but you're going to have one unless you saved like crazy and invested like crazy.
Yeah.
So the big thing for a lot of people that were doing is that before they got out, they would create, through their networking ability, they would create a civilian position within the military to do their existing job. So they would get out and collect retirement, but then get back in and receive a civilian paycheck from the government to do the job that they're already doing. And if they did that for 20 years, then they'd get double retirement from the military.
Smart.
Which is smart, but again, I didn't want to be told where to live. I didn't want to be told where to go, and I didn't want to hold my family up just because of my job. So we made the decision to get out and move back home to Maine.
Okay. Yeah, would you recommend the Coast Guard to anybody?
Yeah, if you're just getting out of high school or just getting out of college and you don't know what you want to do, the military in general is a pretty solid solution, because then at least you know where you're going to eat, sleep, stay, and where your paycheck is going to come from for the next few years. And it gives you some time to figure it out. You can also go to college while you're active duty. With the advances in online education that we've had in the last decade or so, it's not that hard to get a college degree while you're deployed.
Yeah.
So it's definitely doable.
Okay. And would you have changed anything in your own life if you could in those 10 years?
I guess I would have either done aviation so that I was deployed less. I can't even say that because those guys do get deployed. Like, we had an aviation detachment go with us, so they were out there just as long as we were. But they do have more land stations, so I may have gone aviation, but at the same time, I'm really thankful for the skills that I developed doing the job that I did. So I really want to give those skills up. Probably if I was to do it differently, just for selfishness sakes, I would have gone in the Air Force instead of the Coast Guard, because the bases are better, the housing is better.
And if you had done the Air Force, would you have wanted to be a pilot, or would you have?
I can't be a pilot because I have glasses. So you can be a commercial airline pilot as long as your vision is corrected through contacts or glasses. You can be an airline pilot, but not in the military. So I would have probably been some sort of aviation mechanical technician, something to do with aircraft, obviously, because it's the Air Force. But the Air Force actually is more logistics than anything else. So something along those lines.
Okay. So you get out.
Yep.
What year is it?
It is 2013.
Okay. So I'm a freshman in college. Nice.
Okay. And I'm ending my first career.
Yeah. What do you do next?
So we had already bought a house in Maine, so we moved to our house. Kathy and the kids were already there. They actually moved there while I was on deployment. Oh yeah, we had another kid. We had another kid while we were stationed in Boston. So we had Gabby and Maggie. So Kathy and the girls had moved to our house in Maine when I was on my last deployment. Just because it was like, okay, well, we're just going to sit here in this city and pay rent on this apartment, and you're gone. Why do we need to be here? And I was like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So they moved to our house, and Kathy got established doing her student teaching stuff there, and in the process of getting her master's in education while I was in the middle of my last deployment. So I just packed my crap in my pickup and moved out there with them.
Yeah.
And got a job at the local sawmill.
What were you doing?
I was a millwright, so I was installing, maintaining, and unbreaking equipment.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't recommend it.
Okay.
It's hard on the body. I was working 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. 5 days a week. I highly, highly don't recommend that as a career choice.
Gotcha. How long did you do that?
About a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I got the opportunity to join the family business.
Which was?
Pumping septic tanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a family business.
It was a family business. My dad bought a septic truck, I believe in 2004, basically because all of the jobs that he had been doing were all shipped off to China, essentially. So he needed some sort of job to do. So he bought an old, insert pun here, an old shitty shit truck. It was just an old, like a really old Ford, an old Ford pump truck. and he ran that truck for a couple of years until he bought a brand new Kenworth. So he started pumping tanks full time. And then right around when I had pretty much had it with the sawmill life, he said, "Hey, we either need to sell this business or grow this business. Do you want to be a driver?" I was like, "Yeah, okay, well, yeah, that's fine. We'll do that." So we sold our house and moved back closer to my parents and started working for them.
Gotcha.
And Kathy started teaching at the local elementary school.
How long were you a driver until you took over for your dad?
So I didn't really take over for Dad. So I worked the business and co-owned the business for about 4 years.
Okay.
And then at that point, Dad wanted to retire, and I was looking at the prospect of either having to hire at least one person to replace my dad and at least one person to replace my mom as the office person, and then also take on the cost and the burden of $220,000 trucks and insurance and everything else, or to sell the pumping business and just do septic inspections by myself. I went with that route. We decided to sell the pumping business, and then I would retain the inspection part of the business and run that. I actually ran it for 2 years with my mom. She kind of helped me figure out how to do business stuff, how to run QuickBooks, how taxes work, and everything, all that stuff. Because as a military employee, you really don't worry about where the money is coming from. You just know that it's there. As a business owner, you're like, oh, so we have to do this to get that so we can buy that type of thing. And also so you can pay your own paycheck.
Yeah.
So my mom helped me out with that for 2 years, and then they fully retired and moved to Florida. And then I ran the business by myself for another 2 years.
Okay. And Kathy was your accountant?
No. Well, I mean, she was like, okay, so she always had a full-time job teaching. She taught at the local elementary school, and then she taught at the private school in town. And then we decided when COVID hit and the house prices went through the roof, that it was a great idea to sell our house and buy a piece of land and build our own house, because of the proximity of our house that we owned to the ski resort. We could really cash in on it, and it was actually the house that I grew up in. So it was a little bit of a sting to sell that house, but at the same time, it was like, yeah, but we can pay off everything that we owe on everything and also have enough money left over to build a new house if we do all the work ourselves.
Yeah.
So we made the decision to do that. We bought an acre of land from her uncle that is right essentially in the middle of her family's farm property. And we built our own house. That was our COVID project while running our own business. That was quite an adventure. We built a house from soup to nuts by ourselves. I mean, we had help from family and friends, but we were our own. We did every nail, screw, and pipe inside that house. We did, with the exception of the foundation. And we built that house in 11 months, in 3 weeks. I missed moving into the house by Kathy's birthday by like 2 weeks, because the drywall wasn't done yet.
Damn.
So, but yeah, so we moved in, ran the business, and then I decided that I didn't want the stress of being a business owner sitting on my shoulders anymore. The juice was no longer worth the squeeze, if you will. So I sold my business to my current employer, and I went with it. So now I work for a civil engineering firm.
Kind of a side question. What brought you and Kathy together?
Yeah, I don't even know if I can say this. She's got a really nice butt.
Yes.
No, I don't know. My dad encouraged me to ask her out on a date, and I don't know. We have a great relationship. We're just friends. We were friends from day one of going out to dinner, and then her inviting me over to her house for New Year's Eve dinner, and yeah, it was just it wasn't even like a real big effort to make the relationship work. It just works. So
If you had to give somebody advice on a relationship based on yours, what would it be?
if you have to work too hard to make it work, it's not going to work.
Cheers. You have a house in Strong.
Yep.
It's now been, what, 4 years since COVID,
Yeah.
roughly?
Yeah. We ended construction we moved in 2022.
Now you got 2 young ladies,
Sure do.
one of which attends the school that we live at,
That we're sitting in right
that
now.
we're sitting in right now.
Yep. And another one that is hopefully going to be here soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
Yeah. I don't know. When you look back at like going into the Coast Guard, what do you think about your life experience thus far?
I think that we've always decided to take the path that's best for us or for me. Like when it was just me, I took the path that was best for me. And then after we got married, we took the path that was best for us. So we personally wouldn't go back and change anything. Guys, like I tell people all the time that are like, oh man, if I had only done this, or like, oh, if I had only done that. If you had changed, it's kind of like the butterfly effect. If you had changed one thing in your past, you would not be friends with the people that you're friends with right now, and you wouldn't be living in the place that you're in right now. Who knows where you would be? Like if I had not gone home that Christmas and New Year's for vacation to see my family, Kathy and I wouldn't have dated. Or if my aunt had never encouraged Kathy's mom to take her to the program that my mom ran, we would have never met. You just got to follow the path that's in front of you.
If you had to come up with a podcast episode title based on your life experience, what would it be?
I think that was it.
Just gonna follow the path in front of you.
Yeah.
I like that.
And I mean, you listen to all these other podcasts, and they're like, oh, you got to blaze your own trail, and you got to knock down the trees that are in front of you or whatever. But it's like, well, maybe, yeah, going out on your own and doing your own thing is great. But sometimes the best laid path is the one that you should travel.
Do you believe in predestination?
No.
Okay.
No. No one makes my plan, but I do follow the plan as it develops.
Are you religious at all?
Yeah, I mean, yes. We occasionally go to church, and we try to stick with the path that's laid out for people in Christianity, but we're also kind of at the mindset of like the church doesn't make the religion, so we don't necessarily go to church every Sunday. We haven't really found a church community that we would want to go to every Sunday. So, but we're also not opposed to it either.
Yeah. What branch of Christianity?
When I was a kid, we went to the Congregational Church. We are attendees occasionally of the Methodist Church.
What's a parenting tip that you got?
Oh, God. You need to give your kids enough room to make mistakes, but you need to be close enough to catch them. Not necessarily when they're like adults, but in those first, I would say, 15 to 16 years, you have to give them enough room to make their mistakes and recover from their mistakes, but be there to catch them if they really fall.
And how do you already mentioned that you got to take like the path before you,
Mm-hmm.
but with a relationship, how do you keep that? How do you keep the energy alive?
I didn't realize that was this kind of podcast. Oh, not sexual energy. Is that what you're talking
I
about?
mean, we can talk about that, but I was gonna keep it like,
I think Kathy should be here for that one.
yeah, maybe we should do a couple. Ooh, a couple.
Oh, we're going to interview her.
Yeah, we are.
You
How's that
just
gonna work with
you have to put yourselves in a situation where you're doing what you're passionate about, and you need to have a mutual passion. If you don't have mutual beliefs and a mutual passion, then you're not really in the right relationship in my eyes. If your beliefs don't line up and your hobbies don't line up and your core values don't line up, then you're not really in a relationship. You've got a booty call. If you want someone who believes in what you believe in and thinks how you think and wants what you want, then you have a partner for life.
I can bring cheers to my ass.
Are you sure that's not the beer?
The beer's helping. What is something you've changed your mind about recently?
I don't know. I feel like at 41 years old, I've had enough life experience that I don't tend to change my mind very much about things.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't want to say I'm set in my ways, but I'm definitely set in my beliefs. So I don't know. I don't change my mind on things too much often.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What are your goals in the next 12 months?
Goals in the next 12 months. I want to finish our house, and all we have left really is like trim, stair treads, and siding on our shed, and then it'll be done. I would like to become a private pilot powered parachute licensee. I would like to gain a little bit more financial security, as we all would in this day and age.
Yeah.
Not saying that we're all drowning in financially, but just it would be nice to go to the grocery store and spend $100 and not feel like, ow.
A little extra is nice.
Yeah.
A little extra padding.
Yeah.
Mm.
Not saying that's why we're doing this podcast, but some ad revenue would be great. Yeah.
Give us some money.
I can't wait till we start talking about what our LLC name is going to be, or incorporated, or whatever you want to be.
We'll have to think on that one.
Bougie time.
There's a lot of options for that one. Okay. I think that's all I got.
J&M Productions.
Yep.
I'm not saying that J should be first
Jay should be
because
first.
I'm older, but it's literally alphabetical.
That's what I was thinking, so I would not be opposed.
Okay.
Who's a historical figure that you would want to have a beer with?
A historical figure that I want to have a beer with.
Mhm.
I would like to have a beer with Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, brilliant. What kind of beer would Teddy drink?
He would probably drink like one of those really crappy American style pilsners that they had back in his day, because that's what they made to preserve water. But I would like to, I don't want to say force feed, I would like to heavily encourage Teddy Roosevelt to drink like a modern day IPA and just see what happens.
I'd like to give him one of those, what are they, 9.9 percenters?
Like the big can.
Yeah, the big can of the 9.9.
First of all, he'd be fascinated by the art on the can.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd be like, what is this
Do you think that would turn him off?
I think we'd have to put it in a glass just to ease him into it. So, or like a good bourbon. Teddy Roosevelt for sure would be on my list.
What would you talk about?
I would want to know about his river trip.
His last one?
Yeah, where he got stabbed in the stomach or whatever it was.
Mhm.
Yeah. I would want to hear his version of that tale, or also his thought process in creating the national parks, or just public lands in general.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of like a vanilla character to choose, but
Oh, pretty solid. He was a robust man
oh yeah,
with his character and
mm-hmm.
achievements.
And the fact that he got shot into the speech anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like, ladies and gentlemen, I just got shot, but we're still going to do this.
It's on.
It's on, motherfucker.
What was his nickname? He was like
Bull Moose?
The Bull Moose.
Bull Moose Party.
Yeah.
And then the Speak Softly Carry a big stick.
Yep. I try to teach that one to the kids. And they're like, yeah, okay, Dad. I'm like, no, really.
Got it. Carry a stick.
Like,
They just get the second part.
you're right. And they're like, I have my big stick. I'm like, that's not what I mean. It's a metaphorical stick.
Well, Joel, that was honestly,
Stay tuned for part 2.
No, but we will do an episode about your Coast Guard experience with.
I think we shouldn't even call it Coast Guard experience. We should just call it Sea Stories. Like Sea Stories and Hull Hauntings with Joel and Nick. And so I'll bring in some of my own personal stories, and then I'll research some of their stories.
When I was a kid, it's one of those eyewitness books.
Yep.
About ghost ships. And all that.
Yep.
And it was mostly about the Bermuda Triangle.
Okay. There's a documentary on the Bermuda Triangle I'm going to put on as I fall asleep tonight.
Doesn't sound enjoyable to me.
Why?
That'd be scary.
Okay.
I don't have a quote because I wasn't prepared for that.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming on, Nick. Thanks for coming on.
Mm-hmm.
Space, Nick.
That.
Back shots.
Bye.